Brian, let me answer it a little bit different way than my colleagues here. There are jobs in Michigan, regardless of what Mark Schauer did while he was a state senator in concert with Governor Granholm in destroying job opportunities, in taking away incentives and putting disincentives in the way of job providers to have jobs available for the people. But there are latent jobs. When I talk with bankers, when I talk with business people, when we read the news reports and we hear of the dollars that are being set upon by businesses and jobs providers, held back at this time, dollars that could be put into an amazing number of jobs, but are being set back on because of the uncertainty of what in the world is going to happen with this administration. What are the policies that are going to go in effect? What tax increases are we going to see, and loss of the tax cuts January 1? I mean, the joke was made a week and a half ago when George Steinbrenner died that he showed his astuteness in capital and understanding of dollars and dying before 2011, January. So the capital gains tax and inheritance tax weren't there for him. I mean, we can joke about it, but when it gets in the real world, that there are people all across these districts, let alone the entire state, and now the nation growing, that could have jobs, but for the fact that jobs are being sat upon until we get some certainty about what in the world is going to happen. So I think it's our responsibility, whoever gets elected and goes to Congress, to produce a certainty that says to job providers, we know what's going to happen now. We can play by those ground rules. There are incentives for us to supply jobs and use our capital and take risks, as Marvin has said. And then we won't have the cocoons or the hammocks, but we'll have the safety nets for a few, and the rest will have jobs.
Next question is for you, Mr. Walberg. Michigan's roads and bridges, obviously in rough shape. Yet, being a donor state, we only get the minimum of 92 cents back for every dollar we send to Washington. How will you fight to get our full bang for our buck back here in Michigan?
Well, do everything I did when I was in Congress to get dollars back under the transportation budget, road funding budgets, bridges and projects that are important and are, in fact, justified by the number of tax dollars that we put in, whether it be fuel tax dollars or aviation tax dollars or whatever. So we'll fight for that. But I think even more importantly for the taxpayer to know is that I'll fight to save more of those dollars from even coming to Washington. It would be better if we would reduce the overall scope and responsibility of the U.S. Department of Transportation to mainly the interstate federal road system and leave dollars back in our states and local communities so they can determine what is necessary, how the best to provide for the infrastructure for our people, and have less contact with the bureaucrats in Washington to siphon off the dollars.
Mr. Carlson?
Yes, our local road commissions are strangled right now. And I do agree with Tim that we need to make sure that our tax dollars remain here in Michigan rather than being sent to Washington, where we lose 10 or 15% in transfer costs and then get less dollars back than we put in. We need to change that system radically so that the tax dollars, the gas tax dollars and other dollars are spent here in Michigan so that they go to Lansing, not Washington.
Mr. Rooney.
I grew up with Ronald Reagan, and he talked about reducing the size and scope of government. And what does that mean? It means that federal government has taken on responsibilities that have traditionally been left to the states. And you create agencies, you create departments that just grow completely out of what their mandate was. It's like Godzilla growing at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean, and we're all Tokyo now. I was the first one to advocate the devolution of the Department of Transportation, where you say, look, you get back to what your founding mandate was, and that's to regulate interstate trucking and foodstuffs going across state lines, but let's keep our tax dollars here. Instead of sending our money down to D.C. and you have all the congressmen and women saying, hey, look what I brought back to your state, even though we're a payee state. Baloney, you're just bringing back our own money and actually less of it. And then what a lot of people don't know is when we send our money down there, they create one big pot, and this year I believe 40% of it's going to roads, 60% of it's going to greenways, like bike trails and roadways here in Michigan, not in our district, but on I-275. We have a sidewalk to nowhere. People talk about bridges to nowhere, but there's an Interstate 275 sidewalk. Why is it there? Because somebody had the bright idea of putting it there. Nobody ever uses it, but we got to get away from that mentality. One of the best meetings I ever had was at the Calhoun County Women's Republican Club, we had the road commissioner there for Calhoun County, and he opened my eyes to how bad it really is and how we're devolving anyway, where we're crumbling our roads and we're creating dirt roads out of what used to be paved because we can't afford it anymore. We need to keep our dollars here, spend our own money here. That would mean millions more dollars every year for Michigan to spend on its own roads.